Man, that's it for me. I've been thinking about this for a week and kind of what I was going to say, and lately I've just been filled with gratitude for how great of a career I've been able to have, even though obviously in the end it did not turn out to go my way.
Over the years, we have seen fans, pundits, and even the promotion itself hype fighters who look poised to take on the Ultimate Fighting Championship by storm. In some cases, these men and women ended up warranting the buzz they generated. However, there have been quite a few heavily promoted combatants who fell short of expectations. So for this video, we'll be taking a look at a list of fighters who ultimately struggled during their time in the UFC, despite the hype that surrounded them. As always, if you guys enjoy this video, then please be sure to let me know by leaving a like and subscribing to our channel. Now, without further ado, and ranked in no particular order, let's take a look at 10 hyped fighters who struggled in the UFC. Number 10. Thomas Almeida. Brazilian bantamweight Thomas Almeida's career got off to a very hot start. The Muay Thai specialist won his first 20 professional fights, which included 4 victories in the UFC. Moreover, 19 of those wins came by either way of knockout or submission. Heading into his 2016 bout with Cody Garbrandt, the former Legacy FC bantamweight champion was an undefeated prospect and looked destined to one day hold UFC gold. However, Garbrandt would end Almeida's impressive undefeated streak by knocking out the Brazilian in just under 3 minutes. Since that time, Almeida has gone 1-2 inside the octagon, having lost his last 2 fights against Jimmy Rivera and Rob Font. He has also struggled with an eye injury and hasn't fought since January of 2018. Almeida is still only 28 and has plenty of time to right the ship, but for now, the hype train has clearly been derailed. Number 9. Urijah Hall. As a cast member on the 17th season of The Ultimate Fighter, Urijah Hall dazzled the MMA world with his flashy knockouts and natural charisma. Despite losing a competitive bout in the final round of the series to Kelvin Gastelum, Hall looked poised to make waves in the UFC middleweight division. Hall has managed to hang around in the UFC for roughly 7 years, which is certainly a noteworthy feat. That being said, the talented striker has lacked a killer instinct at times and struggled massively with consistency, which has led to an 8-7 record since signing with the promotion. During his UFC run, the now 35-year-old has gone from being viewed as an intriguing prospect to more of a gatekeeper who is capable of putting on an entertaining fight. Number 8. Erick Silva. After winning the Jungle Fight Welterweight Championship and amassing an impressive record of 12-1, Erick Silva was set to make his highly anticipated UFC debut in August of 2011. Between his marketable appearance, exciting fighting style, and impressive record, the young Brazilian had all the makings of a future star. He would win his UFC debut via first-round knockout. However, despite occasionally showing flashes of what made him such an intriguing prospect, Silva's UFC career fell short of expectations. The dynamic striker would spend the majority of his run trading win and losses, which led to an uninspiring 7-8 record during his time with the promotion. Silva's contract with the UFC eventually expired in December of 2017. And the now 35-year-old went on to sign with Bellator MMA in 2018. Unfortunately, Erick Silva has also struggled to gain any momentum in Bellator, as he lost his first 2 fights with the organisation. Number 7. Will Brooks. Chicago, Illinois' Will Brooks was one of the most dominant lightweight fighters in Bellator history. During his time there, he defeated some of the promotion's top stars, most notably Michael Chandler, which led to him capturing the Bellator Lightweight World Championship. After accumulating an impressive 17-1 professional record, Brooks would make his way into the UFC octagon in July of 2016. Given how dominant he had looked in Bellator, a lot of folks were expecting Brooks to become a major player in the UFC. Unfortunately for Brooks, his UFC career never really got going. After a unanimous decision victory over Ross Pearson in his UFC debut, Brooks would go on to lose his next 3 fights against Alex Oliveira, Charles Oliveira, and Nick Lentz. And following that 2017 loss to Nick Lentz, the UFC decided to release the struggling fighter. Number 6. Hector Lombard. Hector Lombard is a former Olympic judo competitor who would go on to compete in Pride FC and ultimately become the inaugural Bellator middleweight champion. The Cuban-Australian powerhouse was an absolute terror during his Bellator run and went 8-0 under the promotion's banner. During that span, he also established himself as one of the sport's premier knockout artists. So when the UFC officially signed Lombard in April of 2012, he was already in the midst of a 24-fight winning streak and was sporting an impressive 31-2-1 record as a pro. As such, he was viewed as a serious title contender. However, as is often the case in MMA, things didn't go according to plan. In his first fight with the UFC, Lombard was upset by Tim Boetsch. And although there was a few nice wins sprinkled in Lombard's UFC run, it's fair to say that for the most part it was a disaster. His UFC record stands at 3-8, which included a 6-fight losing streak. Number 5. Mike Perry. Platinum Mike Perry is a popular fighter who originally hails from Flint, Michigan, and the 28-year-old has been part of the UFC roster since 2016. Due to his over-the-top persona and aggressive style, Platinum has become a fan favourite among many of the UFC faithful. However, the former boxer has had his fair share of troubles inside of the cage. After getting off to a hot 4-1 start inside the UFC, which included brutal knockout victories over Jake Ellenberger and Alex Reyes, Perry looked poised to become the next big breakout title contender in the welterweight division. However, since that time, he has gone on to lose 5 of his last 7. Popular or not, Perry will need to get back on track soon if he has hopes to remain inside the UFC and re-establish himself as a major player. Number 4. Todd Duffee. Indiana's Todd Duffee is a UFC heavyweight who has demonstrated devastating power over the course of his MMA career. On August 29, 2009, Duffee made history at UFC 102 by knocking out his opponent Tim Hague in just 7 seconds, setting the record for the fastest KO inside the UFC heavyweight division. Following the bout with Hague, Duffee was a record-setting fighter in his early 20s, sporting an undefeated record of 6-0, which made him a very intriguing prospect. Unfortunately for Duffee, he would go on to lose his next fight in the UFC to Mike Russo, and was surprisingly released from the company following the loss. Since that time, he has battled with a list of injuries, and fought just 7 times in the past decade. Now 34, Duffee, whose pro record sits at 9-3, recently made his UFC return against Jeff Hughes, a bout that wound up being a no contest. This was due to Duffee suffering an illegal eye poke and being unable to continue. Though it was largely due to a series of unfortunate events, Todd Duffee has gone from being a highly touted prospect to a mostly forgotten entity. Number 3. Paige Vanzant. Thanks in no small part to her movie star good looks, Paige Vanzant is one of the most popular female fighters on the UFC roster. The young fighter has appeared in television shows like Dancing with the Stars and Chopped. In fact, she even modelled for the Sports Illustrated swimsuit edition, and even published her own autobiography. All that being said, Vanzant has found victories hard to come by in recent years. After winning her first 3 fights in the UFC, the Oregon native has fought sparingly and gone 2-3 over the course of her last 5 fights. Moreover, she has only fought 4 times since 2016, but she's still only 25, so it's still a bit early to write her off completely. At present, it's fair to say that she's gone from being seen as a legitimate MMA prospect to more of an attraction at this stage in her career. Number 2. Gilbert Melendez. Gilbert Melendez has had an amazing career in which he became the WEC lightweight champion and 2-time Strikeforce lightweight title holder. Moreover, he also holds victories over stars like Josh Thompson, Diego Sanchez and Jorge Masvidal. However, despite a Hall of Fame worthy resume, things went south for the former champ when Strikeforce, who Melendez was under contract with, was dissolved into the UFC back in 2013. Melendez fought several times in the UFC and went 1-6 during that stretch. He also tested positive for performance enhancers in 2015, which resulted in a 1-year suspension. Following his most recent loss this past July to surging prospect Arnold Allen, the UFC decided enough was enough, as they released the 37-year-old former Strikeforce standout, who is currently contemplating retirement. Number 1. Ben Askren. Ben Askren is a former Olympic wrestler who transitioned into the sport of mixed martial arts. For over a decade, the man they call Funky had a perfect record, and was widely regarded as one of the best fighters outside the UFC throughout the majority of his career. The talented grappler captured welterweight titles in both Bellator and one championship. In November of 2018, Askren, who had a long-standing feud with UFC president Dana White, would finally become a member of the UFC roster. Of course, he was actually a part of the blockbuster trade-in which saw UFC send Demetrius Mighty Mouse Johnson to one championship in exchange for his services. Askren is an excellent trash talker and was able to create plenty of anticipation for his UFC debut. In his first bout, the star wrestler earned a controversial submission victory over former welterweight king Robbie Lawler. Unfortunately for Askren, in his second fight with the promotion, he would make history in the worst possible way. At UFC 239 this past July, Askren was on the receiving end of a Jorge Masvidal flying knee, which resulted in the fastest knockout in UFC history. The former Olympian would fight just once more in the organisation this past October, which would see him submitted by longtime welterweight contender and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu ace Damian Maia. Following the Maia loss, with a shot at the UFC Welterweight Championship seemingly being out of reach, Askren would announce his retirement from the sport of mixed martial arts. Following years of anticipation, Askren would end up going 1-2 during his time in the UFC. As always, if you guys enjoy this video, then please be sure to let me know by leaving a like and subscribing to our channel. Apart from that, thanks so much for watching guys, and we'll see you in the next video.
Never have a doubt, do you like me now? Am I good enough now? Should I get more loud? Till you hear the fucking sound? Oh no, I'm losing my shit again, having to fit again. Man, I'm forgetting when I used to have some friends. I used to play pretend, we all grow up and then hating my phone and trends. I'm about to blow my head, nobody knows I'm dead. There I'm a ghost instead, think that I'm close. I get straight comatose in bed, try to go slow with breath without my nose and head. Heart doesn't go the trend, faster it goes.